Hi, Lulu here from Zenpath. Here's an interview I had with someone just to find out how she got on with the course. She did a 6-week course, the Route Reconnect and Regulate, and this is her response to it. Now, bearing in mind, has a very stressful job, high intensity, low frequency, a heavy duty work that she deals with every day. And she described it as feeling that it gave her lasting change. She feels empowered and it's made an immense difference to her. So have a listen to this. So can you just start by saying what was life like before you began the course?
Mm. So I'm in quite a high intensity corporate job, and I spend a lot of time interacting with others on a day-to-day basis, whether that be clients or not so much colleagues, but in a scenario whereby it's all very high intensity. So I would say a lot of the time is you're very sort of client focused, and dealing with quite high stress situations, whether that even be via email or on the phone or in person.
What were you really struggling with at that time?
I would say is picking up on a lot of other people's energy as to how they were feeling, and because it's so intense, you're dealing with people that generally are going through a very bad time anyway. So you never know how someone's going to react in what we do, and we deal with a lot of I say quite desperate situations. So you're sort of feeling those emotions, which can be quite challenging because you're ultimately there to do a job, and those emotions cannot affect your decision making at the end of the day, but you do feel it. And I call it a bit like it's like having a sponge. And part of it is that as part of the job, we have to do that because you have to sometimes work out to get the best out of the situation that we're in. So you do have to sort of sponge out all that energy in order to progress it in the best way possible. But that is quite a challenging and exhausting place to be.
Yeah. So that really affected
Yeah.
your energy.
Massively. And that's not something I can change. You know, that ultimately that is part of the job. It's just how to necessarily manage that better.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were really struggling then with your own energy feels and being comfortable in your own body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it becomes quite hard to sort of be distinctive. Um, it, there naturally becomes an overlap, especially if you're working a lot like I do. A lot of things are always on your mind, and it it's sort of like having to need the need to have two bodies.
Yeah.
You're sort of the work body and your own body.
Mm.
Because whilst you don't necessarily you try not to take things home, it does a lot of things do sit with you, and there is um ultimately I would say a residual feeling of a day, um as to
Yeah.
what had happened that day or that week. It does probably sit with you more than you realize.
Yeah. So you carry it with you, take it home. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what was it like actually doing the course?
It was quite comforting knowing that other people feel quite similar in the way that they pick up other people's energy, in very different career paths and doing very different things. Um, I would say especially for someone like me within my career every single day, that was what was probably affecting me more. It wasn't necessarily my personal life, whereas a lot of people have a feeling with that within their more personal life. Whereas for me, it was probably more so what well, it is definitely work.
Yeah.
But it was really enjoyable doing it with other people. And I absolutely, what I found really good was how straightforward it was to understand the course and what was requested. It wasn't also too long, so it's quite an attainable thing to do, a little bit every day or and during the week. So I definitely really enjoyed that, and having really practical activities that you could really sort of see a difference. So you do
Mm.
something at the beginning, or even the beginning of the week, never mind the beginning of the course, and you can actually see a tangible difference as it goes along. So you can see that it is having effects throughout the duration.
Great. Were there any kind of moments that you thought, wow, that's really shifted me?
I think doing the sway test,
Mm.
and I think what was quite interesting was some people have quite immediate success of quite significant. And whereas with me, I definitely said I was more of a slow burner. So I didn't do anything, wouldn't say massively changed instantly, but it was sort of small incremental changes that ultimately by the end of it, I felt was also more for longevity.
Yeah.
You knew that it was sort of changing you because it wasn't just sort of an instant sort of satisfaction for me. It did take a bit of time, but I also, as I say, I knew because of that, it was more likely to have an everlasting change. I would compare it to like doing people do like if I did like a 30-day diet, whereas this for me was like I would say it was like a 6-month sustainable project, and everyone has different. I think everyone has different outcomes from it, but for me, it was definitely a long-term outcome.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Mm.
Um, so how has your, since it's finished, how has your sense of self been?
Oh, my sense of self.
Yeah, understanding yourself.
Yeah, I've realized that I've sort of had to create, and I mean, we do talk about it, you talk about it on the course about sort of like a ring, or if you've got energy coming to you, what color is that? Whereas I sort of feel like I have like a tube, and literally I stand in this tube of no, I would say light or whatever, and I just sort of like don't try and not let it come in. And if it when it does come in, because it does it, and every day what we do is unfortunately sometimes it does it, but it's just let it just like knock it down and let
Mm.
it literally come out of you and not feel it. And I think that's the difference is as I was saying about referring to my job, I can't help the situation I'm in. It is
Yeah.
what it is. And I'm okay with that. But actually, it's just managing it rather than sort of. I mean, a lot of people probably just can combat it completely and go, I'm not even going to let it get anywhere close. Whereas, unfortunately, as part of what I do, I sort of have to let it come in. But it's just about being able to deal with it. Um,
So
in
you do you find that you're actually it's easier to work in your environment having done the course?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it is those days where it's very challenging, but um, I would definitely say on a manageable level. Sorry, that's the fire alarm going off. On a to be able to manage it every day, day to day, is I would say it is life changing. It
Oh,
absolutely is. It absolutely is, and yeah, the effects have been yeah, it's hard to it's sort of hard to express because everyone has a very different experience. But mine has been very beneficial.
oh,
And
that's
actually
wonderful.
yeah, being able to deal with it and manage it is probably
So
better.
what would you say to someone watching this? What would you say from your heart?
Um I would say is I think when maybe you don't realize how much it affects you until you start combating it and really looking at yourself. And I must admit, if I'd gone back to maybe week 2, 3, you don't necessarily, as I said earlier, you don't necessarily notice the immediate differences. But having done it now a little while ago, I probably underestimated until you really look at it now how much of a change it has had in
Mm,
what I do.
mm,
And to an extent, um, it also makes me feel empowered to be able to continue to do what I do. Because a lot of I won't say burnout, but when if I looked at what you were doing, it's not you sort of talk to people about it and people go, how do you deal with that every day? And I think you have to, yes, you have to have a certain character in what I do, but also you have to have a mind and the energy to be able to deal with it, which isn't part of any sort of career, or and no sort of degree can tell you how to do that, but that is just your inner self. And I think there is a huge empowerment of being able to cope in certain situations and scenarios that you never think you're going to be in. And even if I look at, my friends, for example, and I sort of can pick up their energy. So taking out a work context, I can very easily go, it's going to be okay, and sort of not get too affected. But I also feel like I can be a better friend in some respects, because I'm looking at things in a more sometimes logical way rather than really feeling it. And yeah, I mean, it's just all round has had an immense difference, but I wouldn't say there's just been one certain thing, because there hasn't.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm so thrilled that it's
Oh
changed
no,
your life.
thank
It's
you.
brilliant.
I really enjoyed it. And I think, well, as I say, what amazed me is how people in every different situation and scenario have such a positive impact from doing it. And it's, as I say, it's very tangible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
brilliant.
I had the best time, best time.
Oh, well, wonderful. And thank you very much for sharing it with everybody.